Hi, this is Marsha.
And this is Kelly.
We are the 2U's of 2U's Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at 2usfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our 2U's Fiber Adventures group on Ravelry. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Ravelry, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode.
Before we get started with our show today, I'd like to make a quick announcement. I have been notified by Stacy DSL, that's her Ravelry name, who runs the Ravelry group Spinning with Friends, that they are forming a benefit for her friend Eileen Shannon Evans. Some of you may know Eileen as Leprechaun, Leprkon, on Ravelry. Back in September, Eileen had a major stroke and she's out of rehab, but she still has a long recuperation to go and lots of therapy. So, her husband is retired, they're on a fixed income, and her community is throwing her a benefit to help with the medical bills and therapy bills. So I just wanted to make an announcement on the podcast about that, and I will put the information in the Ravelry thread if any of you are interested in contributing to this benefit for Eileen Leprechaun. And also Stacy is working on getting an online donation site, and we will be putting a link to the online donation site both in our show notes and also in the Ravelry group for people who are interested. So just wanted to make sure that all of you who might know Eileen Leprechaun on Ravelry, that you might want to help to support her recovery. All right, now on to the show.
Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Marsha, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Did you have a happy Thanksgiving?
Yes, it was very nice. It was very relaxing.
Good.
In the last episode, I talked about how I believe I talked about this, that I was ordering everything from Whole Foods. And I did. And first I have to say it was really fun when I went down to Whole Foods in Inner Bay to pick up the food. I was expecting it to be a madhouse and just awful going down there. It was a madhouse, but fun, because all of the people who are working in that area where you're picking up your dinner all had hats on that looked like pies. One woman had like a big giant drumstick on her head, all made out of like craft paper.
Uh-huh.
How remember in the 80s how we always wore those plastic headbands, or like little girls wear those little plastic headbands.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had those on, and then like had the pie, and like one was like the tinfoil pie tin. Then it had like a like some red paper, and then it had strips of paper in like a lattice shape,
Oh, like cherry pie.
Like cherry pie. Someone had a pumpkin pie. Again, the best was the turkey leg. And it was big. It was like 12 inches long on top of her head. Right. And, a turkey on top of someone's head. And I don't know, it was just really cute. A pumpkin. And they were all really seemed like they were having a lot of fun. And then everybody standing in line was so happy, because they're having buying their entire dinner, and they can just go home and put it in the oven and relax.
So you actually picked it up on Thanksgiving morning?
Yeah, I went down about 10 o'clock and picked it up. And it was great. I mean, everything was delicious. And so the turkey comes pre-cooked. But what you do is you put it in the oven for about an hour. It actually took longer than that to get it up to temperature, but you want to get it up. So even though it's fully cooked, you just want to get it hot.
Right.
And then you want to crisp up the skin. Yeah, but it was all really good. And I think that the turkey dinner for 4 people, which was the turkey, potatoes, the stuffing, green beans, gravy, and the cranberry sauce. Plus, then I did a side of roasted vegetables and a side of roasted Brussels sprouts. I think it came to $141, which I don't think I could buy all that food. I mean, how much is a turkey?
Yeah.
I've never bought a turkey, but how much does a turkey cost?
My turkeys, and Betty got a really good deal maybe $1 a pound, maybe 99 cents a pound.
I talked to somebody and they said they pay like $35 for their turkey.
Uh-huh. Well, I know the diesel turkeys, because we did that one year, the free range turkeys.
And this was one of those, it's diesel.
Yeah.
I always want to call it diesel.
Yeah.
I know it's not right.
Those, I think she said that those turkeys this year were like $50. And we did not buy one. We didn't. I usually make 2 turkeys, and we did not do those.
Yeah.
We just did the regular.
Yeah.
The regular plain old turkeys. One year I'd like to do, they have turkey hunting down at Fort Hunter Liggett. Mm-hmm. And I keep thinking I'd like to have, that's what I'd really like, is for somebody to shoot me a turkey at Fort Hunter Liggett, and I would cook one of those turkeys for Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a quiet Thanksgiving this year because there were many fewer people. And although it's nice to have the whole family, I have to say it was really fun to have the table set where it was all at one table. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have to, I had enough dishes. I had enough, we had enough silverware. We had enough chairs. It's like, okay, maybe it will be first come, first serve next year.
Yeah, really. You put out the invitation.
The first 8 people.
The first 8 people to respond get to come. Yeah, that's it. No, it was, well, I have to say, this was really nice. The food was good. We ended up having, I was me, Ben, Paul came, my brother came, and then our friend Gary came at the last minute. He didn't have a place to go, so he came. So there's 5 of us. And we had so much food left over, too.
Yeah.
Even though this is supposed to serve 4 people, tons of food. We ate it for 3 days.
Yeah.
And it was just really easy, and cleanup was easy, and yeah.
A new tradition.
I recommend it. A new tradition. And what I was going to say, though, about standing in line and talking to people, all the customers who were there picking up their meals were so happy. And they're all standing there saying, this is the way to go. This is the best thing. We do this every year. It's just great. So everybody was in a very, very happy mood.
Oh, that's good.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Well, projects.
Yes. Tell me about your projects, Marsha. Or should I say project? Singular.
Yes, I do have multiple projects, but I'm really only working on one pretty exclusively. So my Compost Spin, and I'm doing, to remind people, I'm doing the pullover called Beeline by Heidi Kirrmaier, and I've knit the body. I don't remember now where I was in the last episode, but what I did is I knit the body down the length that she says to knit it to. I haven't done the ribbing yet. What I did then is I put the body on waist yarn because I wanted to do the collar, the neckline. So I did that first because I wanted to do the sleeves next and finish those to make sure I have enough yarn to complete the sleeves and the neckline. And then the yarn that I have left over, I'll use to finish the body. And I wanted to do the neckline before I did the sleeves because I think that affects the length of the sleeves.
Oh,
like if you have the neckline unfinished, I was kind of wondering if that would affect it. So anyway, the neckline's done. The first sleeve I finished last night and picked up the second sleeve. And I did that sleeve in 4 days.
Wow.
That's the fastest.
No sleeve slog for you.
I now kind of want to get it done. I'm so close. And I have to say about the sleeves, too, when I was doing the body, if you think about the body, it's in the round, so it's just a big giant tube, right? So there's no stripes forming. But I was concerned when I started doing the sleeves, since it's a much smaller cylinder,
right.
That it was going to form stripes. So when I alternated skeins on the first sleeve.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. It does form some stripes because it is random. So you can't control. Well, I guess I could if I just broke off yarn and restarted, but that's not the point. There's sections where I was knitting with 2 blues. Mm-hmm. Even though I had 2 separate skeins, they ended up randomly turning out that they were both blue or both yellow. So even though I alternated every row was from a different ball, There's a little bit of striping, but
there's a tiny bit of striping in the body. I mean, it's small though. I mean, it's not wide. Some of the Compost Spins have many rows of the same color. Where yours it would be like one row or two rows in one section. Maybe your color repeats are much shorter.
Much shorter,
than some of the ones I've seen. I think it's turning out really nice.
I know, and I love knitting with my yarn too.
Yeah.
This is the first sweater I've made. I mean, I've only made 3 projects with my Handspun, and they were hats, socks, and a scarf. That's all I made.
Well, and it was your really early Handspun too.
Right. Yeah, and I mentioned this in the last one, is I'm impressed with my spinning. I mean, it's remarkably even. And I have learned too that even if it isn't perfectly even, it doesn't matter, because once you wash and block it, it all evens out. Well,
and the 3-ply is a good choice. A regular traditional 3-ply is a good choice if you're worried. I know there are a lot of people who do a lot of, well, okay, this is going to sound judgmental, and I don't mean it to. What I think of as a lot of gyrations to try to make sure that they get as even as possible. Like they'll take their spun singles and they'll wind them off onto like storage bobbins, which are really like the bobbins that you use in a weaving shuttle. You buy these weaving bobbins and you put like 1 ounce or something on each bobbin. And so they put them all on storage bobbins and then they number them, which it's a good thing to have storage bobbins if you don't have a lot. Like I have a lot of regular bobbins. Over the years, I've just added to my collection. But, you know, if you only have the 3 bobbins or 4 bobbins that came with your wheel, it's nice to be able to take stuff off of your bobbins for storage if you're doing a big project. But anyway, they number them all so that they have them in order of how they spun them. And then they like make sure that they ply some of their first spinning with some of their last spinning, because things could change during the course of your spinning. Chances are that what you were spinning when you first started and what you're spinning at the end of the project are not necessarily consistent. And so that way you don't, like if you ply 3 of your earliest ones together, that's going to magnify whatever was the consistency of your first ones. And then if let's say you got thinner as you went along and you ply 3 of your later ones together, then that's 3 thin ones and your early ones are 3 thicker ones. And so you've now magnified the difference. So I understand the concept of doing that, and I think it's probably very admirable. It's like, you know, making large, which I also advocate, and I actually do make large swatches usually. And, you know, it's one of those things that is a good idea, but do people really do it? And so I know there's people who do actually do that, but it kind of doesn't matter.
Well, and Kelly, I'm laughing because you said you do make large swatches. Mm-hmm. You want to know how big my swatch was?
About an inch.
No, well, it was about 4 inches. It wasn't that big. I just did a 4-inch swatch.
Well, 4 inches is not horrible.
Oh, okay. Okay, it wasn't an inch square. At least, you know, that would be really bad. But, no, anyway.
But I do think the idea that when you take 3 plies and put them together, the inconsistencies are sort of averaged out in a way that's really nice. And so...
Well, and I think it makes a really round yarn, too.
Mm-hmm. I like a 3-ply.
Yeah.
A traditional 3. Now, if you do a chain 3-ply, you actually exaggerate the inconsistencies because your thin section of yarn will all be plied back on itself and your thicker sections will all be plied back on themselves. So if you feel like your spinning is inconsistent, then and you want a more consistent finished product, that's probably not the best choice of plying. But anyway, I think a 3-ply can, not that you have evils in your spinning, but it can cover up most evils in spinning. And then once you knit with it, the same thing. And then your colors are so beautiful and wild and random that's another thing that sort of It's like it doesn't really, the texture of the yarn is secondary. Mm-hmm. I love how it's coming out. It's really pretty.
I know. I'm really excited by it.
Super bright for a Seattleite, Marsha.
I know. I know. I don't know what's wrong with me.
There's going to be people.
Really, I guess I'm a Californian at
Yeah,
heart.
really.
Because that's when I went to
You're just a rebel.
Knockers retreat. Yeah, I'm a rebel. But that's what I noticed at the Knockers retreat is that all the Californians were knitting with bright colors. Mm-hmm. And up here we I don't understand it, even though I live in the Pacific Northwest, why we paint our houses beige and gray, why we wear black and gray. Ever do you see anybody in a bright color?
I would think if you lived in such a gray place, you would just be wearing red and turquoise and orange and hot pink and Church Mouse. I have to say, Church Mouse Yarns and Teas is a beautiful shop, but I didn't get inspired to buy anything when I was there because there was no, the colors were beautiful and muted but when we were shopping for my swirl sweater and I wanted something super bright.
Yeah. So, you're a California girl.
I guess, yeah. Yeah.
Before we get off my combo spin and because I really have nothing to say about any of my other projects because I've done nothing on any of them. We had one of our listeners.
This is so cool.
It was so funny. And so she said that she'd been listening to several episodes and she kept thinking we were saying compost spin.
No, compost bin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote down compost spin. Compost bin. And she thought it was she doesn't know anything. She did not really know anything about spinning. And she thought it was a spinning term like frogging is a knitting term. If you frog something.
Some kind of slang, yeah.
Yeah, and so compost bin.
Marsha's compost bin sweater.
Yes, and this was GloriaMcC.
So
and
funny.
We both had a really good laugh. I'm glad she said something
I am too,
because it's so funny. And I've actually gone in and renamed my project Beeline Compost Bin in honor of GloriaMcC.
That is great. Yeah, I was sitting at the kitchen or at the dining room table, and I still have the really nice tablecloth on the table from Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And I literally had to practically breathe in coffee, not to just spit it totally all over the table. If I hadn't had that tablecloth on the table. Mm-hmm. I think I would have just spit my coffee all over the table. I was laughing so hard when I saw that.
I know. I thought it was so funny.
And the other thing that's funny about it to me is that we have talked about compost bins, and I really have this affection and attachment to my compost bins. I have 2 Smith & Hawken. From when Smith & Hawken was around, compost. They're these plastic squares that stack on top of each other. Really nice bin, and I had one of them, and then my aunt, not Aunt Betty, but my other aunt gave me a second one about the time that Smith & Hawken went out of business and closed down, and so I got a second one. So I have these and I just love them. And I do, I'll spend one of my days on my weekend will be doing something with the compost. Robert will say, "Oh, what are you going to do today?" "Oh, I think I'm going to do some compost management, And so we've talked about, Marsha and I have talked about having an episode where we did a little bit more detail about composting. Because we compost a lot of stuff. I compost a lot. 2 big compost bins, not just yard waste, but kitchen waste and paper waste and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I just thought it was super funny, not just because of the mishearing of combo spin, but because it's totally in our wheelhouse to be talking about compost bins.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, I'm sitting here right now knitting on my compost bin.
I think our name of our episode, I don't usually think of the episode name during the episode, but I think the name of our episode has to be Compost Bins and Combo Spins.
Yes. So funny. Anyway.
Well, thank you, Gloria, for giving us both a huge laugh and for sharing that.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
So, Kelly, what about your project?
Well, I'm sort of like you in the fact that I just really have one that I've spent most of my efforts on, and that is the Cowichan sweater. I've finally gotten back to it. I had been doing other things, charity hats and cowls. I don't remember last episode that went out. I don't know if I talked about the fact that I was up in Sacramento and went to the knitting group, the Fox and Goose Knitters group. But so when I was there, I had charity hats that I was knitting, and I made a charity cowl. So I'd been doing all of that kind of stuff. I had not touched my sweater in a couple of weeks. And so as soon as Thanksgiving vacation came, I think Wednesday afternoon when I got out of school, I sat down and I just started cranking on that sweater, and I got all the way through the color work of the orcas, which although I love the way it turned out and I like them, what a pain doing 3-color work with only 2 hands. I never really got a rhythm. With the 2-color work, I got a good rhythm going, the little wave motifs. But on those whales, I had a hard time. I finally did put stitch markers in, like every 10 stitches, because in the chart, it's like I could divide the chart up. The chart was divided up into 10 stitch blocks. And so I did put the stitch markers there because I was just having such a hard time getting into a rhythm. And that did help. I should have done it a lot sooner. But I have a question. 3 hands. I need 3 hands.
Yeah. Well, and I have a question about the 3, because I've done color work, but I've never done 3 colors. It's always just been 2 in a row, because you've got 3 colors in a row. Right?
Exactly, yeah. You have 3 colors in every... You have 3 colors in every row, and even if you're not, well, a couple of places it was just like one little blip, but still you have to drag it along and weave it in.
So my question though is, it's really thick yarn, right? Bulky. So how does that fabric look now with the?
It's very thick. It's going to be very warm.
Get an obvious answer.
No, it's super thick. The fabric is super thick, and it's going to be really warm, and it's really heavy. But yeah, it's like a triple layer.
So do you think that I guess what I'm trying to ask, does it look good? Does it look?
Yeah, it does. I had to. And I'm hoping this will come out in the blocking. I had to start over a couple of times on the section with the orcas, because you weave in like every second or third stitch. It has you weave. There's a technique, a traditional technique that I was trying to use, and so you weave in your unused strands every like second or third stitch, and so they were starting to show through. Different, my tension wasn't good, and so I could see, like between the stitches, I could see the other color popping through. And I mean, I'm not experienced at color work. This is my first adventure with color work, really. I mean, I've played around just on my own, but this is my first real color work project. And so I don't have a lot of experience, but I think it was my tension, and that's why these stitches were popping, the woven in part was popping through. And so I could see the color, so I'd rip it back and start again, try to make my tension more even. And that helped. I still have a few places where, like in the dark gray, the beigey brown is showing through. The worst part is in the, like, where there's a white showing through in the gray. And if I go on the back side and pull a little bit on that yarn and pull it into the back, it takes care of it. I'm kind of hoping that when I wash it, the yarn puffs. Oh, I know the yarn puffs up when you wash it. So I'm hoping when I wash it, it will puff up a little more and maybe fill, kind of. I'll do a little tiny bit of fulling, and it will maybe fill in those gaps between the stitches so you don't see that so much. Okay. It's not horrible, and I noticed it on other people's project pages. There were some people where it was really noticeable. Between the stitches, they'd have like a line of the background color, the other color. And mine's not like that, but it was something that I'm not totally skilled at.
I say you will be when you're done with this sweater.
I don't know if I'll do another one, but I'm gonna have a lot of yarn left. So, but it's great. I really like it. I have done all the way through the orchids. I got that part done. I got all the whole front and backs are all done. And now I have to do the collar. And I have to do the sleeves. And then I was noticing, and this, I don't know why I didn't notice this before, but for the size that I did, there's only like one stitch before the orcas start in the front. And so when I put the zipper on, it's like it's almost going to cut off their nose, which I'm not pleased with. I wish I would have paid more attention. I would have added a couple more stitches.
Yes, what can you do now?
Well, I think what I'm going to do is, I had a sweater once that you put the button band on, not like picking up stitches and knitting out, but casting on 2 stitches and then, or in this case, it was like 4 or 5 stitches. It was small yarn, doing like 4 or 5 stitches, and then on on one side you knit 2 together to attach it.
Oh.
So you were like knitting a strip and attaching it by knitting 2 together. And so the button band was knit vertically instead of picked up stitches and knit out. And so I think what I might do is add 2 stitches on either side, 2 or 3 stitches on either side.
That's a clever idea.
I think I could use the width because it pulled in more than I expected. It's not too small, but it's not as kind of big as I thought it was going to be.
I think that's the thing with color work is that, it does pull in a little bit. Because you have to. There's that fine line between having the yarn that's traveling across the back being too loose or too tight, and finding just that right. And so it's and I think too loose was what was causing the yarn to show through on the other side, but too tight makes it pull in a little bit. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to add a couple of stitches on either side, and then that will give me a kind of a, I don't know. I think that will give me like a little bit of a, what do you call it? Where, where you put the zipper in and you have a little bit of sort of allowance or seam,
you have like a little
seam allowance,
a little lap that goes over the zipper on either side. So I think that will allow me to have a little bit of that without cutting off the, without having that seam go down through the noses of the, it's not noses, but whales don't have noses.
That's true, they don't have noses.
But that part that you would think of as above the mouth, which looks like a nose.
Maybe they have bows. That's their bow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something about yarn management with your having to deal with 3 colors, right? Now, I wasn't the sleeves of my Compost Spin sweater. I was alternating skeins. And what I started out with, I thought, I didn't have enough. I only had 1 ball of yarn. The rest was still in a skein. And I wanted to start alternating. So I thought, well, since the yarn's all different, right, I can just pull from the center. So I was
from the center and the
knitting with the outside and then pulling one from the inside. And that lasted about, I think I did about 20 rows. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, this is not going to work because it starts wrapping around, so it's almost like you're plying it again.
It's all tangled.
Yeah, so I had to just break off one and just wind another ball of yarn, which is what I should have done in the first place. But I thought, I can do
this will save me time.
This will save me time, and I realized I was spending more time on twisting it and untangling it that it was faster just to wind another ball of yarn.
Although I don't like that either, having 2 balls of yarn either. And this I had 3 balls of yarn. And theoretically, I think you should be able to like weave one way and then weave another way and they don't get twisted together. But I was not able to do that. And so I would just periodically have to untangle them all. But I'm not using very much yarn because it's so bulky.
Yeah.
It's really not using very much yarn, so there may be another one of these sweaters in my future.
Well, I say, doesn't Robert need one?
He does not want one.
Oh, does he want a hat?
He might wear a hat. Yeah. He might wear a hat. So
okay, so he seems pretty adamant that he doesn't want another one.
He doesn't want a sweater like that. I don't think he really needs a sweater. He has this really, really, really disreputable thing that he wears to work. He puts it on every morning. My mom got it for him. In fact, it was his Christmas gift. It was in the early 90s. Remember the year we went, we brought the dogs up and when Ray was a puppy and we went cross-country skiing. I don't even think Ben was born.
No.
Yeah. So that year, my mom sent up Christmas presents, and they were sort of like grunge style. So he got this shirt that has a hood, like plaid. At one point, I think it might have been like flannelly, fleecy, polyester stuff. Now it's like, I don't know. There's no fleece part left to it. But he has this shirt that's like a fleece shirt with this hood. Anyway, it's got, like, it's worn through holes and it's filthy. I mean, it's stained, it doesn't come clean anymore. And so he has, like, 3 years till he retires. And he says, this shirt just has to last me for 3 more years until I retire. And so it's got this big hole, hole across the back.
Because it's so Robert.
Yeah, so early 90s. It would have been early 90s, this sort of grunge look thing. But
well, and he had that before did he have the job? He didn't have his job.
I don't think he wore it to work at that time, but he started wearing it to work. Now, he doesn't work in it. He puts it on as kind of like a coat between the house and the car, and then, in the car on the way to work. And then he wears a uniform at work, so when he gets to work, either he's already dressed in his uniform and he just takes it off and puts it in his locker, or he gets dressed at work and puts it in his locker. So he doesn't actually wear the thing at work. He just wears it between home and work. But
it's for commuting.
Yes, it's his commuting sweater. So I said, I could make you a sweater to replace that. And he's like, no, this is gonna be my work sweater until I retire.
Well, maybe after retirement you can make it.
So I said, maybe I can make you a sweater after you retire. And he's like, well, I won't need it.
That's true.
I only wear it in the car on the way to work. So I don't know that he really needs a sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a vest that I made him. And he hardly ever wears it because it's really warm.
Well, I was going to say, you don't really live in the climate to wear one of these sweaters anyway, Kelly.
No.
So it's...
yeah, unless I made him like, a fingering weight, like my funky grandpa, that type of sweater. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, he does not need a Cowichan sweater for sure. Yeah. I don't need one, except that I want one.
I know.
We have, so this is a little tidbit about our weather. About now, right before finals start, I used to always accuse our old vice president of business services. He was always like sort of miserly. And so I used to always accuse him of turning off the heat at the college the week before finals to save money, because they turn it off, while the college is closed. Mm-hmm. And so it would always be super cold in all the buildings for finals week, and I always accused him of turning the heat off. But what really happens is that that's the time of year. So it started to get cold, but like next week or the week after, we'll have our frost, like our first frost, cold snap, into the 30s at night and cold during the day. And it's like our heating and cooling system can't handle it, right? It can't handle the severe cold. And that severe cold only happens maybe for a week while we're at work. And then we're not at work. And then there's maybe a week or not even 2 weeks in January. Usually by the time we're back at school, it's not cold enough anymore. So yeah, I probably won't get much wear out of this, but I am going to
just commuting.
It'll be good. Yeah. It'll be good to put on while I walk to work and then carry it home. So I really want to finish it for our camping trip. We have a camping trip in late December, so it will be good for camping. And I just have always wanted one, so it doesn't really matter if I wear it or not.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what? Now that you have it, you'll find places to wear it. Mm-hmm.
I'll wear it when I come up to visit you in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, any more projects?
That was my only project, but let me just double check here. Oh, so yeah, I did some work in the garage with dye pots and playing around with some of the yarns that we had. We had a few skeins of undyed yarn that I finished up and dyed and put up in the shop. And that was really fun. That was the day after Thanksgiving, the 2 days after Thanksgiving, Friday and Saturday, that I did that. So that was really fun. And it's been fun shipping out orders. So yeah, we have our coupon code for free shipping. It's Shop Small 2017, and we've had a few orders. It's been really fun to see what people are ordering and the combinations that they're coming up with. And I just want to thank everybody who's been ordering, but especially Cheryl. We have a listener who has been a really good customer of the shop, and I wanted to point out her shawl.
Yes.
She made this amazing shawl. I really love it. Out of the Rambouillet. And Marsha, we have talked kind of a lot about this Rambouillet yarn.
Yes, I know.
And how much we like the texture of it. But this...
I would say another one of our obsessions.
Yeah, yeah. And her application of this yarn is just really, really pretty. She made one of your favorite shawls, Marsha, the Among the Shadows. Mm-hmm. You're on your, second one?
My second one.
Yeah. So she did the Among the Shadows shawl with our Rambouillet yarn. It's C. Clabo's Blueberry and Cream shawl, because the yarn that Marsha dyed, we named it Blueberries and Cream. Mm-hmm. And she bought 2 skeins of undyed and then 1 skein of the dyed yarn and made the shawl Among the Shadows. So pretty. And I don't think I would have known it was the same shawl.
No, I didn't either. And what I think is really great about that pattern is I think it calls for DK, which the first one I think I made was DK. I don't know. What I'm using now is lighter weight than the yarn I used the first time. This Rambouillet we were talking about, it's heavy worsted.
Yeah.
And so it looks great. I think that's a great pattern for whatever weight yarn you have. As long as you do a swatch and you like the fabric, you can use any kind of yarn, I think, for that pattern. And case in point, hers looks great.
Yeah, it does. And the texture, we've talked about the texture of this yarn before. There's a lot of garter stitch in the shawl, and the garter stitch just really, I don't know, it just really shows off the texture of the yarn in a way that I really like. So I just kudos to Cheryl for a really great pairing of yarn and pattern. It's really, really pretty. So I'm really excited to see what else she does with some of the other yarns, that she's bought. So, and then the other thing that I did, I don't know, Marsha, do you remember if I've talked about my wool combs before?
No, I don't think so. No, you haven't.
Okay.
So I want to hear about this.
Okay, so I have very dangerous, murder mystery.
Well, I saw the pictures on Instagram, and they look like weapons.
Yes, murder mystery weapons like Colonel Mustard.
Yeah.
Colonel Mustard in the craft room with the combs, with the wool combs. So I have these combs. I bought them, I got them as a Christmas present from Robert many years ago when I was first spinning, from Rose at Red Barn Farm. And I knew Rose from the spin list. And I don't think Red Barn Farm is still, I can't find an online listing for it. But anyway, she had these combs for sale in there. I think they're called 2-pitch. I think pitch means how many rows of nails or spikes they have. So they're 2-pitch. And they're the kind that clamp to the table. And so I have some of the Border Leicester Corriedale cross that we had spun into yarn. Some of it I didn't take to the processor, and I have it just as wool, washed wool. And so I was using that. I was combing that into little, I don't know what you call them, bumps, little nests, roving. So basically I made hand-pulled top, not roving top, comb top from these. And that was fun. I think I made 200 grams, 100 grams, 50, I can't remember now. I think it was about 100 grams that I made of this. And I haven't spun it yet, but it's nice. I mean, it combed up really pretty, this Corriedale Border Leicester. So I think I'm going to do a little bit more and put some in the shop for people and then spin some of it for myself. And then I have some of the Romney that we had made into yarn I saved out. I'm going to comb some of that. And then I dyed some other Romney that I had when I was dyeing yarn. And I started combing it. These combs, you clamp one to the table, and then the other one you comb through. And you comb it all so it ends up on the comb that's in your hand. And then you use the one that's, let me start over. The one that's clamped to the table, you stick all the locks on it. So it has all these locks sticking out from it. And then you comb through the locks until it's all, except the waist, all the long parts are on the other comb.
Okay.
And then now that it's on the other comb, now you go back and you comb it, you drag it through the one that's clamped to the table until they're all back on the comb all the fibers are back on the comb that's on the table.
Okay.
Except some waste is left behind. And then from there you have this thing called a diz, which is the one that came with my combs is a round circle, kind of concave, has a hole in it. And so you pull a little bit of the fiber and you thread it through this diz. And then you just pull it off. and it pulls through really small, but it puffs up when it comes out. Mm-hmm. So you're pulling, I don't know, 300 fibers, 500 fibers. I'm not sure how many individual fibers it is, but you're pulling the fibers through, and then they come out as top. So really cool, all aligned, not like carding where they're kind of jumbled, but really super aligned because they've all been combed straight, and then they've been combed straight again, and then they've been pulled straight through this little hole in this wooden tool. So,
okay, and can I ask a question?
Sure, yeah.
If you haven't carded it first, though, right?
No.
You're just using the straight washed fleece from the sheet.
And this particular fleece, when I washed it, the part that I kept behind and washed it stayed in lock formation.
Okay.
Because it was a long wool. It's mostly, the locks are all still mostly together. I didn't pull it apart or, do anything to it to sometimes you pick it apart to get the dirt out of the tips. I didn't do that. It was nice and clean, so I didn't need to do that. So it's all kind of you have individual locks that you can pull out of the cleaned fleece, and then you take those locks butt end onto the combs with the tip end hanging out. So I'll put some pictures in the show notes so people can see. I did post it on Instagram, so people who follow me on Instagram probably saw the picture over the weekend of what I was doing. Yeah, so anyway, I pulled this white natural color fleece comb top off, and then I thought, I'm going to dye some. So I dyed some of this Romney that I had, and I did the same, it dried, and the next day I did the same thing. Well, I had forgotten to rinse it.
Oh. And
I dyed it with some leftover dyes. So it didn't totally exhaust. So I'm pulling this comb top, and my hands are turning purple because all this extra dye, it's called crocking when the dye comes off, all this excess dye that I didn't rinse out, and that I clearly had too much dye in the dye pot for the amount of fiber that I had. So, and it didn't exhaust, and I didn't rinse it out, and so I'm getting purple hands. So I know when I spin it, it's going to make my hands turn purple, but then I'll just rinse the yarn really well, and that'll be fine. The color will stay in it, but there's just too much extra dye.
Yeah. But
anyway, it's really fun to use my combs. It's been a long time since I've used them, and I haven't done a lot with them since I got them, but I was looking for a long time. The last month or so, I've been looking for the clamps, and when I cleaned out the studio, I found them, so it was fun to try those again.
And do you have any idea what you're going to spin out of it?
I only have a little, so I think I'm just going to spin a sample skein just to see what happens, just to see what it turns out like. But it'll be a true worsted, it's a worsted prep. It'll be a true worsted spin where I'll, do kind of inchworming, kind of spinning, keep all the fibers aligned and very tight, and so it'll be a kind of a hard wearing, tightly spun yarn. I might use it for the that punch needle. That would be a really good application, I think, of a nice shiny, because everything's aligned. It'll be really shiny. Yeah. So. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, it was exciting. Yeah, it was fun to do something that I haven't done before. And then I may do some more and use it for weaving. I haven't made huge weaving plans, but I have some. So.
Well, weaving plans. Do you want to talk about weaving?
Yes, I do. I haven't put out the second weaving lesson yet. I need to do that. I got kind of busy in November. We talked about that last time.
Yes.
So I'm going to be putting out the next weaving lesson. But meanwhile, I wanted to talk a little bit about weaving. Marsha, we need to get you weaving.
I know. I need to get weaving. I want to get weaving. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all the things I need to do.
You need to. Well, your sweater will be finished soon.
Yes. I'm madly knitting on it right now. Can you hear my needles clicking?
I thought that was ice.
Oh no, here's my eyes. Can you hear my eyes now? We always have ice here at the podcast recording. So I have the tabletop loom that you loaned me. It's a few years ago. And it's been sitting in my basement closet, and I need to haul it out. I keep pulling it out when I get out cooking equipment, and then I shove it back in there. And then I haul it out again when I get out Christmas decorations, and then I shove it back in there. So this time I'm actually going to haul it out and keep it out.
Oh, good.
And actually have you help me start a weaving project.
Yay!
I know. So we need to talk about what I need to do, sort of, to prep me a little bit. Okay, so do you have some yarn that you think you might want to use? Marsha, do you have some yarn? What do they always say? Is the Pope Catholic?
Right.
Yes, I have some. Well, I have lots of yarn that I've collected over the years. So a spirit yarn. So I would just use some of my spirit yarn. You should pick something that you think is not, because this will be my suggestion is that you just do a sampler. And I know, like, I resisted when I was in my weaving class. I sort of resisted doing a sampler that was going to be like not useful. And so I made a sampler that I did as a wall hanging. But it is a good idea to do I think it's a good idea to do a sampler. And it doesn't have to be something, especially if you kind of don't want pressure. It doesn't. You don't have to think of it as something you're actually going to use for anything. So I don't need to set up the loom to weave 12 placemats. Please don't. Okay. But I could do something like I could make it wide enough that it could be like to put in the center of the table. You could, yeah, if you wanted. Okay. If you wanted to do something like that, or you could do like a dress or scarf. Kind of a thing, people put things on their dressers, or like a table square. Yeah. That just goes in the center of the table. Yeah, something like not a table runner or something, but something just kind of small. Right. So yeah, what I'm thinking is to have you do something that's relatively narrow, because one of the things about dressing the loom is that you have to thread. Every thread has to go through the heddle and through the reed. And so that's two places that you have to thread it. And that takes time. So if you make something really wide, that's a lot of threads. Right. And so if you make something narrow, okay, yeah, that takes time, but it's not that many threads. So relatively speaking, it's not that much time. Okay. And then also, if you don't weave something really long, now normally when I weave something, if I'm going to spend the time to make a project, I put a long warp on so that I can make, if I'm going to make dish towels, I put a warp on so I can make 6 or 8 dish towels. But for a new weaver, I think it's better to make a smaller project, narrower and shorter warp. Okay. You don't have as many tension problems if you do a shorter warp. You get it done faster if you have a shorter warp. One of the things when you're first weaving, actually, who am I kidding? I still have this problem. The first thing I weave, I want to take it off the loom and see what it looks like. Right? So if I have a warp that's for 8 dish towels, I have to wait until
the 8th dish towel is done before I can see what the first one looks like. And there are ways that you can cut the first one off and then tie it back on, but when you do your planning for the length of your warp, there's really not enough length for you to be able to cut the first one off and retie it, unless you plan for that. So yeah, for your first projects, your first few projects, you probably don't want to do what more veteran weavers do, which is put on a longer warp with lots of whatever it is you're getting ready to weave lots of them. You probably don't want to do that if you're a new weaver. I don't think. I think it's better to do something smaller.
Okay.
So yeah,
So So remind me again. The warp is the one that runs
lengthwise.
Lengthwise. And does that need to be a certain fiber? It can be anything I want. Can it be some of the wool that I have? Or should it be cotton? Or
it could be wool. It could be wool or cotton. Probably you don't want to use singles. You want to make sure you choose something that's relatively strong. I mean, it doesn't have to be, linen or the kind of yarn that you can't break with your hands. But you probably wouldn't want to use like Madeline-Tosh. What is that called? Madeline-Tosh Light? Tosh Merino Light? The singles?
Okay.
Yeah. You probably don't want to use something like that.
Would worsted weight be okay?
Yeah, you could use worsted weight.
Okay.
I don't know. Actually, I say that, but we need to know a little bit more about the loom that I gave you, because it's going to make a difference what size reed you have. How many, they're called dents, the little holes in the reed. So the reed is the part that looks like little comb teeth that goes across the loom. And so we'll have to look at how many of those you have. What's the size?
Because the yarn has to be able to fit through the little
Yes,
dent.
The yarn has to fit through the dents, and you don't want something so dense. Not dense, D-E-N-T-S, but dense, D-E-N-S-E. You don't want something so dense that it doesn't fit well through the dents, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
you would not want the wool that you're using for your Cowichan sweater.
Probably
that would not fit through. Probably not.
That will probably not fit through the reed that you have. Now you can get other reeds, but I think you just have the one that came with the loom. I don't think I sent you home with. I don't think that loom had extra reeds. So the first project we'll just do with the reed that you have. So that's the first thing, is to look at the reed that you have and see how many dents per inch it is, and then we can figure out what kind of thickness of yarn will work the best. And then you might want to use something to weave with, since this is just going to be a sampler. You might want to use something to weave with that you bought and you like it and you think it's pretty, but it's kind of scratchy.
Well, I have a bunch of yarn that I actually got. My favorite shopping place, the Goodwill. That are like these Irish yarns. I think they're from Ireland, and they're very, very scratchy. I mean, I don't know what you would use them for. I mean, you definitely would not use it for a sweater that would be against your skin, that kind of thing.
Upholstery that you don't sit on with shorts.
Yes. So I have some of those. I could probably pull those out.
How thick? How thick of yarn is it?
It looks like it's worsted weight.
Okay.
It might be lighter than that. There, a lot of them are singles.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait a minute. You're saying not to use singles. Well, but if it was a single that was really light, like a lace weight or something, or fingering weight, you're saying not to use.
Well, it depends how strong it is. You could definitely use that for weft.
Okay.
You could use singles for weft with no problem.
Okay. But I'll look through because I've got tons of stuff that I've either gotten at the Goodwill or, taken from the de-stash room at various places. So, I can find something. And but then does my warp all have to be the same?
No, you can use different things in your warp. If you're using things that are vastly different, I would suggest that you do a warp that is more mixed. Like I wouldn't suggest stripes, warp stripes of yarn that's pretty vastly different. If they're going to be different, you want them to be sort of evenly distributed throughout the warp.
Okay.
Just because it's kind of like if you made a knitting project with different kinds of yarns and you did like 3 inches of one yarn and 2 inches of another yarn and they were different weights, you'd notice. But if you did like one row and then one row and then one row and then one row, you wouldn't notice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so you should look at your yarn and see what you have, and then we can think about what you want to use for your warp, and
Okay.
it'd be kind of fun.
Okay.
One of the things I'm going to do in the lesson that I'm going to send out is talk about how you decide how many warp threads per inch you're going to use. Mm-hmm. They call it ends per inch. And that helps you. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do to be able to know if you can use the reed that you have for your loom.
Okay.
So.
And how do I figure that out?
So you'll take the yarn.
Okay.
The yarn that you're thinking of using for warp, and you'll wrap it around a ruler.
Okay.
Not packing it really close together, but just loosely around a ruler, and see how many of those yarn wraps you have in an inch.
Okay.
So spinners do this all the time, to measure what they call wraps per inch.
Right.
And weavers do it too to measure, they call it ends per inch. And so you'll wrap the yarn around a ruler and see how many you have in 1 inch. If you're using multiple, different yarns, you'll want to take all the yarns you're using and wrap them all at the same time. Line them up together and wrap them, and maybe wrap more than 1 inch and then average it out.
Okay.
And so then once you see how many wraps you have, you'll take 1/2 of that to 2/3 of that. So anywhere between 1/2 and 2/3, depending on the type of weaving you're going to do. And that's how many ends per inch you'll have.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what you'll want to do.
Okay.
With the yarn that you're thinking of using.
Okay.
And then, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe an 8, 10, 12 inch wide sample that you can make.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's what I was thinking. That would be a good size.
Yeah, it's not too many threads, to thread through the heddles and the reed. Okay, so that's your homework, Marsha. Figure out what yarn you want to use.
Okay. I'll in the next couple of days here, I'll sort through my bin and pull out.
Drag out some stuff.
I could even, Kelly, I could dye something.
You could. You could. You might want to use just what you have for the first project.
Yeah, why make it more complicated?
And then dye. Well, I'm just thinking you have a lot. You have some choices there. Yeah. And then you can dye something once you kind of have an idea of how it works. You can dye something to go with what you have. Okay, well, I'll get to work. All right. I'll sort through my bin here in the next couple of days. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, my bins. All right. Well, that sounds fun, and I'll get the lesson out about how to do the wraps per inch and ends per inch, and figure out what it's called set instead of gauge. Like knitting has gauge, weaving has set. So you'll figure out. So I'm going to have a whole nother set of terminology. So you haven't read the first lesson handout, right? I'm putting you on the spot. I know you haven't. No, I have not. What have I been doing, Kelly? You've been busy.
I've been busy.
You've definitely been busy. But so in the podcast feed is the Winter Weave Along 1, and people can get that through the podcast feed, or you can go on the thread, the Winter Weave Along thread. I'll post information about how people can get it as a download.
Okay.
That lesson, the first lesson and I haven't done the second lesson yet, but I'll post that one.
I guess my homework is to read the first lesson. That's my homework.
Right. Okay.
Do I get? What is it when you always had to go and ask the teacher if you're going to have an extension?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Marsha gets an
Kelly,
extension.
May I have an extension, please?
Oh my gosh.
Excuse me. Okay. Well, so is that?
Yeah.
I have my homework and my marching orders for weaving. And I think there's something else we want to talk about.
Yeah.
So, we're going to have a meetup.
Yes. This is so exciting. I'm so excited about this.
I know. So, Kelly is going to come and visit me in January. And we are working on the details. But we are going to have, we're going to meet up on January 6th. It's a Saturday. And what are we calling it? A crafternoon.
Yes.
And who gets credit for that? Crafternoon.
I think it was Fran. It's Fran. Who called it a crafternoon. I had some people over for after the back in the summer when they had the fleece judging. I had some people over, and I think it was It's Fran who said we were having a crafternoon.
Yeah, so we're going to have a crafternoon, January 6th. Sometime in the afternoon, we're going to work on details, but mostly this is just save the date. Well, I don't know if there's much more that we need to say at this point. We're going to work on, we have some ideas, things that we are going to do, giveaways possibly, but we'll talk more about that later and the time and how to get information about it. So probably the next episode we'll have more information.
Yeah, next episode... the next couple episodes we'll talk about it, and we'll also put information in the Ravelry thread. So yeah.
But I think this will be really fun. I meet listeners in California when I go down to visit. But there's a lot of people who live up here in the Seattle area. They're hoping that they'll come and they can see both of us together here.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And we can meet people.
Yeah, I'm excited to meet some of our Seattle area listeners. Some of them I already know, but there are.
Well, and I always feel like we know people if we communicate with them on the internet.
Right.
But to actually see them face to face, will be really nice.
It'll be fun.
Anyway, but as we say, we'll have more information about that, but save the date.
Yes.
Saturday, January 6th.
Food, drink, fiber adventures. January 6th. Sounds good.
Okay. So now, Kelly, anything else we need to talk about?
I think that's about it.
Well, then, till next time.
All right. Bye, Marsha.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit 2usfiberadventures.com. We have links for iTunes, Google Play Music, YouTube, and others.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2Us
doing our part for World Fleece.